One of the most intriguing plotlines for this NBA season was Zion Williamson's comeback to the court. Everyone was thrilled to see him back in action because he had missed the entire previous season due to an injury. Zion did not let the Pelicans down upon his return either, as he contributed to victories over the Nets and Hornets. However, he recently suffered yet another injury while up against the Utah Jazz. So stay tuned to find out how Williamson is holding up after his recent nasty fall, along with some of the Pelicans players' questionable performance, or lack thereof. Let's get into it all. First up, Zion Williamson had a nasty fall while up against the Utah Jazz. What happened? How is he? Let's take a look. According to various online sources, Zion Williamson allegedly suffered a posterior hip injury and could not finish last week's home game against the Utah Jazz. Williamson reportedly sustained the damage during a terrifying fall while attempting to complete a slam in the fourth quarter. Despite appearing to be on his way to a strong jam on a breakaway, the former Duke Blue Devil could not completely escape Jazz guard Jordan Clarkson, who disputed Williamson's attempt. Now, it's unclear whether Zion Williamson will be able to play in the Pelicans' upcoming game after taking a hard landing on his back. Williamson had already completed 30 minutes of play with 25 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks, a steal, and an assist. While the Pelicans undoubtedly treated Williamson gently, deciding not to push him back into action, Zion Williamson had other ideas, and his intensity on the court must have had Pelicans supporters clutching their breath after he missed the whole 2021-2022 NBA season due to a nasty foot injury. Williamson's condition has yet to receive a thorough update, but it doesn't appear that he sustained an injury severe enough to keep him out for several games. The Pelicans will have a full day of relaxation on Monday before returning to the court at home against Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks after losing to the Jazz 122-121 in overtime. But what do you think? Will Williamson be back in action, or could this be another long-term injury for the popular player? Next up, Williamson along with Brandon Ingram and Herb Jones are all expected to sit out against the Dallas Mavericks. According to New Orleans Pelicans coach Willie Green, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and Herb Jones are all expected to be labeled as questionable for Tuesday's game against the Dallas Mavericks. Ingram, who suffered a head injury, and Williamson, who suffered a posterior hip contusion, could not complete during the team's recent 122-121 overtime loss against the Utah Jazz. Furthermore, despite a late knee niggle, Jones continued playing until 11.5 seconds remained in the game before fouling out. Despite the loss, Coach Green expressed his gratitude to the Pelicans for avoiding any serious injuries with all three. The coach added, "Nothing serious, but something we should keep an eye on over the coming days." Green also stated that although Ingram was being examined for concussion-like symptoms, the forward was not part of the concussion protocol since the Pelicans were still keeping an eye on him. Additionally, the Pelicans imaged Jones's right knee on Monday morning, and Green reported that there was no serious issues. Now, we know that Williamson fell and hit his backside after Clarkson caught the ball with his hand. Following this, Williamson initially attempted to continue playing, but one possession later, he was hauled out of the game, but continued to sit on the bench. According to Green's comments following the game, Williamson's injury prevented him from playing again, but he shouldn't be out for many games at all, more of a precaution. So what happened with Ingram? Well, when he and teammate Najee Marshall went up to try to steal a pass in the first quarter, they collided. The Pelicans took a timeout so that Ingram could leave the game when Marshall's hand made contact with Ingram during the following possession. Ingram appeared to be alright after being assessed by the team trainer, even assuring several teammates that were on the bench that he was fine. Then at the 6:33 mark of the second quarter, Ingram checked back in. However, he was called to the bench less than a minute later to check out. Instead of going to the bench, Ingram and the rest of the squad went straight to the locker room. As you can see, the Pelicans are facing a lot right now in terms of injured players, but we hope that these are all minor, as Coach Green has stated, and the Pelicans are back in full force in no time. In other recent NBA news, after missing time with an injury, Zion Williamson is officially back for the Pelicans. The New Orleans Pelicans got off to a pretty slow and sluggish start against the Los Angeles Clippers this past weekend. However, things began to pick up after the first quarter with 18 points. The Pelicans cranked up the tempo to defeat the Clippers 112-91 after forward Zion Williamson returned to the lineup. After missing the team's previous 2 games due to a right posterior hip and lower back contusion from a fall he suffered on October 23rd while up against the Utah Jazz, Williamson was back in the starting lineup. And against the Clippers, he was back in top form, scoring 21 points to go with 12 rebounds and 7 assists, one shy of his career high. The Pelicans, then led by coach Stan Van Gundy, switched to utilizing Williamson more as a point guard during the 2020-2021 campaign, allowing him to run the offense and make plays on the fly. Williamson claimed that since that time, his playmaking abilities had developed. In the past, Williamson admitted, "I guess I would hurry spray it occasionally, trying to see the open pass. But now I'm just letting it go. As soon as I notice them making that shift, I kind of let the defense shift towards me. We have some talented shooters on our team, and I can track them down so they can make the shots. Because of a weakness Green and his staff noticed in the Clippers' defense, Williamson quickly made plays off of his drives and establishing possessions. Furthermore, his teammate McCollum, who had a game-high 22 points, expressed his appreciation for Williamson being back on the court and praised his passing all day. Using passes from Williamson, the Pelicans made 7 out of 11 shots. Now, Ingram, who suffered a concussion in the Utah game, was still out for the Pelicans. According to Green's pregame remarks, Ingram was still in the initial phases of the concussion protocol. For the Lakers game, New Orleans might have 2 additional players available. Herb Jones, right knee hyperextension, was listed as questionable for Sunday's game against the Clippers. But once he completed the pregame warm-ups, it was decided to sit him out altogether. In addition, guard Dyson Daniels, a rookie, is suffering a sprained left ankle. As you can see, the Pelicans seem to be plagued with injuries, but thankfully, Williamson is back on the court where he belongs. And finally, in other NBA news, it appears the Brooklyn Nets continue to struggle. But why? Well, here's what you need to know. To address their appalling play, the Brooklyn Nets became the first team this season to hold a players-only meeting. Just a reminder that the Nets have only played 6 games of the 82-game season. Pretty underwhelming, right? Now, in a season where many anticipated the Nets to be among the best teams in the Eastern Conference, they dropped to a sad 1-5 after losing to the Indiana Pacers most recently. Fans and experts alike were expecting huge things because the team featured 2 otherworldly players in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, as well as a returning all-star in Ben Simmons. However, nobody could have even anticipated the lifeless shell of a team they are currently serving up, unable to generate any momentum on either end of the court. The pair of Durant and Irving's averages over 30 points per game right now, demonstrating their ability to score at will. After that, there is a sharp decline in performance, with power forward Nick Claxton, who averages 11 points a game, finishing 3rd on the team in scoring. Since the team seems to be in a rut, the team decided to conduct its first players-only meeting of the year, following their most recent defeat to discuss the issues. After the defeat, Nets coach Steve Nash observed it was a disaster. Ben Simmons, an Australian star, then expressed that the gathering was an open discussion about keeping one another accountable. The Nets have struggled with Simmons' troubles on both ends of the court, and it was clear that Irving was frustrated during a game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Only the floundering Detroit Pistons are worse on defense than the Nets, who ranked 29th in the league after giving up 122.2 points per game. They presently have the 3rd worst net rating and are last in rebounding percentage, 45.2%. Following the team meeting, when questioned if the team was receiving his messages, Nash, a 2-time MVP winner, said that a lack of defensive communication was to blame for the damage they've been doing, and not the good kind. He also explained that they are arguing and simply not working together as a cohesive team, which has really set them back. But what do you think? Could the Nets turn this season around? Could they be back to one of the best performing teams? Only time will tell. And there you have it, everything you need to know about Zion Williamson and how he's holding up with following his scary fall, along with some other Pelicans players who may not be back on the court anytime soon. Now, make sure to let us know your thoughts down below. And as always, thanks for watching.